Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about lube injectors. So this is a 5-port manifold, typically used on CNC equipment or industrial applications. This is used particularly to keep linear guide rails oiled. Keeps them looking nice, gets lube to them so they last a little longer. If you look here at the end, you see these witness marks with holes in them. Those are pins that actually push out, and when these fill up with pressured oil and then release a particular amount of cc's for each one of these lines. As you can see, it'll focus. Yeah, you have to trust me. This one's labeled 0.3, and that is in cc's. So each time this thing cycles, it will issue 0.3 cc's to each one of these manifolds. This one has 5 ports and 2 on the sides. Typically, you'll have an input, your 5 ports, and then an output, or it will be plugged off depending on where in the machine this is located. These can be put in series typically, so you can run your X and Y axis off of this, or on the Z, sometimes this will be only one of them, so you'll only see 5 with a plug. This is what it looks like when it's broke apart. As you can see, this is that plunger. Works off of a double nested coil spring. Like that. So it's getting a lot of pressure into it. It takes a lot to energize this thing. But once it is energized and is working in the machine, you will see this plunger be pushed outwards like that. So visually you can tell that this thing is not sticking and it's functioning and actuating. On the other side, just give me this little poppet inside of the nut here with a little spring pushing against it. That guy, you will lose that if you take it apart in the field. It's a pain in the balls. As time goes on, typically these are used with a 68 weight lubrication oil, either VG 68 or Lube 68, depending on what your manufacturer calls it. That'll typically have a paraffin-based oil, and over time that paraffin will build up and those pins won't stick out very far or consistently on this whole block. If you go to look at it, you will see a block like this. Will probably be filthier than shit. And a couple of them will be working, or all of them will only be partially working, or you just won't see all of them once they're energized. It's a good indication that this whole block needs to be replaced. They're relatively cheap. It's a good thing to do on a PM service every couple of years or something like that. It's a little insurance. Why don't you spend a little bit of money now instead of putting in a set of rails later? So, good tip with this kind of stuff is to find one of your buddy's wrenches that you don't give a shit about, and you're going to want to grind these things flat. Give you a little more clearance. Typically they're at 8mm and a 10mm. The reason you're going to want to do this is because the 8mm actually fits on the line nut right there, and this is going to give you a little more clearance to cinch it down. The 10mm particularly is down here, and it gives you very little clearance to get to that thing, so you pretty much need to grind a wrench. You're not going to need to torque these down. This isn't a contest to see how tough you are. These things just have to seal. That's it. These are the nuts that will attach to the lines. They'll either be brass, copper, or plastic, depending on the pressures or whatever your manufacturer uses. It's pretty open-ended. They will use a small ferrule to crimp down on that line. So you're going to want to put this thing on first, then put your line through the ferrule, and then you're going to put all 3 of these into there. And crank that thing down, and that ferrule will crimp to your line, and it's there forever and ever. They work pretty well. I typically don't see problems with them other than that paraffin wax buildup. You can clean these, it's a pain in the balls, easier just to replace them, but usually they're in a very bad spot. They're never very convenient, they're always filthy, it's a pain. So typically, if you're talking about a 3-axis machine, you're going to have something that looks like this. You're going to have 2 linear rails. Let's say this is a 3-axis mill, and this is going to be your x-axis, so this is right off the casting of the machine. You're going to have 2 rails and 4 trucks. And going to that is going to be one of these manifolds mounted. You're going to have an incoming line going here. Each one of these lines is going to be going to one of the trucks. So there's 4 lines right there. The 5th line they leave open, or you can plug it depending on what you're doing here. Or you can run either the 5th line or this open port here to another manifold that's going to go to the top of your saddle, which will be this red line here, which is going to have another 2 linear rails going the opposite direction, obviously. And you will have 4 lines going to that. So you will use these in series there, and I lied, the 5th one will be going to the ball screw in between here. So, easy enough to replace, not a rocket science job, just filthy and takes forever. That's all I had to say on that. I hope you learned something that helps you out. Thanks.